memoir, which was considered more self-indulgent, but at the same time, it's not just about you, it's about you and her, and so...
Well, I feel like she turned me into a memoirist. It was her fault.
Mm-hmm.
You know, she has no one to blame but herself.
Yeah.
There was this period of 6 weeks when I was a child when I was having trouble making my diary entries. Well, actually, both of my parents are responsible for me becoming a memoirist. First, my father gave me a blank diary and showed me how to write in it, and started me out. He wrote the first lines, "Dad is reading." Okay, he said, just write down what's happening, and he was sitting there reading a book. So he got me to write a diary, and then when I was having trouble with my obsessive compulsive behavior, it was taking me a very long time to make these entries because I was obscuring them with bizarre little marks. My mother took dictation from me. She said, I'll write down what you want to say. Just tell me what you want to write and I'll put it down. Which sort of prefigured my future years in therapy, where another woman would sit writing down the things I was saying. But it was a very wonderful period with my mother, those 6 weeks when she actually sat there and listened to me, because she was very busy and preoccupied and distanced most of the time. And so this act of writing down what I did every day became very loaded for me.
The thing that there's this, another thing you got from Winnicott is the idea that there's sensitive children that sort of, in a way, care for their parents. So you say in the book that it was a way for your mother. So you wrote a book about her for her.
Yeah, I did. And I even though I knew my mother wasn't going to recognize that, she was going to acknowledge that it was a book for her. It was a gift. It was a very elaborate way of telling her that I loved her, because I couldn't just say that to her. I mean, sometimes I would try, but she would be like, "Yeah, okay." But I feel like it did get through to her, but it wasn't like she ever fully acknowledged it. I think she's focused on the criticisms in the book, and I was critical. And
I mean, just the fact that she read the book, accepted it for what it was, and it seemed that her criticism were concentrating on the technical aspects, but not on just the mere fact of doing the book.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that fascinated me in Are You My Mother is Donald Winnicott. Because I know very little about psychoanalysis. I know a little about Freud, but Donald Winnicott I'd never heard about. So could you explain to us who he is and how you came across his work?
I first heard about Donald Winnicott in a book by Alice Miller called The Drama of the Gifted Child, which is sort of obligatory reading when you begin psychotherapy. It's all about how everything is your parents' fault.
When you bought that book, the sales lady told you, prepare to leave your own life behind you.
Yes. A lot of people, it's a traumatic book for them to read. But in that book, there were a few mentions of this analyst named Winnicott, and Alice Miller doesn't use any pronouns. She just keeps calling this person Winnicott, and because the ideas she was talking about were very warm and nurturing, very maternal ideas about what happens between the baby and the mother, I assumed Winnicott was a woman. It wasn't until much later that I learned he was a man, but in fact he was like a very feminine man with a high voice and this kind of magical powers with small children. So I wanted to find out more about him, and I started reading biographies of him. Adam Phillips wrote a really great biography of Winnicott, and his life was so interesting. He considered himself impotent, and he was in a marriage for 25 years with a woman with whom he did not have sex. They had this celibate relationship. But then later in his life, in his 40s, he started having an affair with another woman, and he was 48 the first time he had sex. And I just found that really fascinating and brave. It seemed like this guy really just challenged himself, really lived his life in an exciting way. He was constantly learning and growing. And after he began this successful relationship with the second woman, his work blossomed too. He was just really becoming himself in a wonderful way. And